We have by now had Pokémon based on what feels like literally everything. I mean, we even have Pokémon based on the popularity of other Pokémon. That's how far we've come since Generation 1 and its many typical RPG monster inspirations. So it shouldn't be a huge surprise to hear we've also had several Pokémon based on actual real life people, arguably the highest honor that can be bestowed upon a person. Today, I want to take a look at all of them, and trust me when I say there will be at least a few here you didn't know. Like Emboar. According to Ken Sugimori, only the main illustrator of the Pokémon series, the Tepig line has Chinese design origins, with the final evolution being based on the Chinese war general known as Xiang Fei. Now, this is where things turn a little confusing, because while Xiang Fei was a real person from 200 AD China, he is also a character from the famous historical novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and he is arguably more well known from the fictional portrayal in the book than his real life endeavors. So much so in fact that Sugimori literally mentions it's the character from the book that inspired Emboar, and not the real person. Still, I'm counting it. Xiang Fei did exist, and while he may not be the direct inspiration of Emboar, he was definitely the inspiration for the fictional character Xiang Fei, on which Emboar is undoubtedly based. One element from Emboar's design that may be directly based on a quite morbid detail of both Xiang Fei's real and fictional life is the fire wave around its neck. So, the general met his end after being betrayed by his own subordinates, who, as was common at the time, cut off his head to present to the enemy. This may be what inspired the designers of Emboar to have its head also separated from the rest of its body with the fiery wraith, which, with some imagination, could even be seen as cuts out of which flames emerge. While Emboar makes up not just a starter trio, but also a thematic trio with Serperior and Samurott, those two are not based on specific real-life people, instead more the generic images of Western nobility and royalty and Japanese samurais. Next we had the Jodar for Wobbuffet, who's based on a person most of us have probably never heard of. Well, that and a punching bag, obviously. Specifically an Okiagari Koboshi doll, which has the same squinted eyes Wobbuffet has. Punching bags don't put their hand up to their head, almost like a salute though, which is behavior Wobbuffet picked up from Japanese comedian Hayashiya Sanpai I, who, interestingly enough, died in the early 80s, meaning it's not like this was a contemporary reference or anything. When Hayashiya would make that salute-like move, he would say his iconic catchphrase Sonansu Okusan, which translates to "that's just the way it is, man." And while that doesn't mean anything to us in the West, the Japanese name of Wobbuffet is literally Sonansu, so that's just the way it is, making abundantly clear none of this is a coincidence. That said, the later introduced why not does not tie into this at all, and even in Japanese doesn't reference Hayashiya whatsoever. Let's continue with another Pokemon based on a Japanese citizen, one who fortunately is still alive. Snorlax's origins were once a little more than an inside joke, but by now I feel like it's pretty common knowledge the sleepy Pokemon is based on Game Freak planner Koji Nishino, who has worked on every single Pokemon game since the originals. He allegedly has quite the appetite, inspiring his friends to create a Pokemon that loves food based on his likeness. And honestly, the resemblance is closer than you would expect. While this extremely niche reference of course went over the heads of the localization team, meaning Snorlax's English name doesn't reference Nishino at all, his Japanese name actually does. Kabigon is derived from Kabi, the Japanese name of Kirby, fellow Nintendo character from its own titular series, which is the nickname the team gave Nishino. Just like him, apparently, Kirby also loves to eat and is known for sucking out food and enemies like there's no tomorrow. What is funny about all this though is that Kirby's name originally comes from John Kirby, the lawyer who defended Nintendo in a case against Universal, meaning that to some extent Snorlax is also named after him. And while we're on the topic of names, let's zoom in on some Pokemon whose designs are not really based on real people, but their names actually are. The perfect example is probably Kangaskhan, whose name is almost literally Genghis Khan, the founder of the Mongol Empire and famous warlord. That said, Genghis Khan is actually not his name, but a title, and the word Khan would continue to be used for centuries, even to the current day. So while the similarities between the two names are too big to ignore, it is technically possible that Genghis Khan's name is a portmanteau of kangaroo and Khan that just so happens to sound like Genghis Khan. Other Pokemon names with human origins are even less direct, to the point where you can question whether the human had any bearing on the Pokemon. But hey, we're on the topic anyway. Teddiursa's name and design are obviously based on teddy bears, whose name is based on Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy for friends. Galvantula's name is a combination of tarantula, of course, and galvanism, the name for generating electricity based on a chemical reaction. It's named after Luigi Galvani, the Italian physicist who discovered it and about 300 years later had a part of his last name immortalized in a Pokémon name. The inspirations for Archeops are closer to 30 million years before Pokémon, but Archaeopteryx obviously aren't people. Who was though is Cheops, an Egyptian pharaoh whose name has been romanized as Khufu. While it is uncertain whether Archeops' name is actually based on this pharaoh, it's not like Cheops is some minor monarch. He is believed to be the one that commissioned the pyramids of Giza, no small feat to say the least. While Abra and Alakazam's English names are not based on real people, but instead the common magic term Abracadabra, Alakazam, their Japanese names actually are. Abra is known as Casey, which is an alternative spelling of the last name of Edgar Casey, a self-proclaimed psychic from the early 1900s who could apparently enter self-induced trances. Alakazam's name is Houdini, which is obviously based on Harry Houdini, one of the most famous magicians of all time. Kadabra's Japanese name is Yangerer, which is based on the name Uri Geller, another self-proclaimed psychic and magician, one who is actually still alive. And Pokemon was about to find out what that meant, because when Uri Geller saw Kadabra bend a spoon in his trading card and recognized it as his own trademark move, he sued Pokemon. A part of that was because he believed the star on Kadabra's head to be based on Nazi imagery, which as a Jewish person, he was obviously not a fan of. Sure, we all know that was absolutely not the designer's intention, but hey, if you do pick it up like that, I can at least understand you would be taken aback by it. That said, the story of how he allegedly found out is hilarious, so I don't want to continue without telling it. So, apparently, Geller was visiting Tokyo when he came across a Pokemon Center and visited it. While there, he was crowded by people who all shouted what sounded like his name, but was actually Kadabra's name, and everyone wanted him to sign this Pokemon card. Imagine that happening to you when you have no idea what's going on. But while this is still all fun and games, what's less fun is that Geller sued Nintendo for $100 million in 1999 for infringing on his likeness, which actually prompted Nintendo to say none of their Pokemon characters' names are based on a real person, which is just a flat out lie. Well, eventually, after a ton of legal blah blah blah, the court cases never went anywhere, mostly because Geller is British-Israeli, neither of which have laws strict enough for copyright to sue Nintendo over this. It did cause Kadabra to be left out of the TCG and later the anime for nearly 20 years. Abra and Alakazam would continue to appear though, sometimes with cards that skip past Kadabra entirely. Hell, Pokemon Rangers Shadows of Almia even features Abra and Alakazam, but not Kadabra, which might be related to this. But in 2020 there was finally a happy ending. After an article from The Gamer, which somehow reached Uri Geller, he wrote a letter to the chairman of Nintendo to allow them to use his likeness for Kadabra again. He regretted the case he had started 20 years earlier and was officially rescinding the ban. But while I have to say, I was initially doubtful this would change anything, I was proven wrong. Kadabra has since appeared in the Pokemon anime and has even had a trading card again, which for the longest time seemed impossible. I think this story very well illustrates how Pokemon's status has changed in those 20 years, from what felt like a hype or a fad in the 90s to the biggest media franchise on the planet these days. And that is also reflected in the responses from celebrity inspirations. While Geller did not see it as a compliment at all, Gene Simmons, the frontman of rock band Kiss, thought it was a huge honor when he found out about the existence of Obstagoon, which is very clearly based on his and his band's style of makeup. Obstagoon even plays in a band known as the Maximizers in Sword and Shield, as the only member that doesn't have a direct musical connection, so it's pretty clear where inspirations for it lie. The easiest way to avoid problems altogether though is by basing your Pokemon on people who are already dead, which is what happened for the remaining ones left to cover. Like Empoleon, who is obviously inspired by Napoleon Bonaparte, the famous former emperor of France. Its English name references the emperor's first name, while its Japanese name Empart is a combination of the word emperor itself and Bonaparte. Aside from that and the obvious royal inspirations behind Empoleon's design, it and the Frenchman are also the exact same height, 170 centimeters or 5'7", which is relevant because one of Napoleon's most well-known features is his alleged short height. And while it is true 5'7" is not exactly tall by today's standards, in the France he lived in this was actually above average. Just like Empoleon is much larger than any real life penguin. We continue with the two Hitmons, Chan and Lee, and as you probably know, those two suffixes are based on Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee, actors famous for their martial arts films. However, only their English names reference these actors, their Japanese names go for different people entirely. Hiroyuki Ebihara was the inspiration for Hitmonchan, whose Japanese name is Ebiwalar. Ebihara was a boxer, obviously, who became world champion several times during the 60s. Tadashi Sawamura served as inspiration for Hitmonlee, whose Japanese name straight up is Sawamura. He was, appropriately, a kickboxer, and a super famous one at that, especially in Japan during the 60s. Unlike Ebihara, he lived long enough to see Pokémon come and rise to its current point, alongside Hitmonlee, the one he inspired. That feat did not befall Charlie Chaplin, not even close, but he did serve as very obvious inspiration for Mr. Rhyme. Although, it's less the man and more his character known as the Tramp, a character so iconic I don't think many people know this is not what he actually looked like. This was a costume, a character he played in silent movies. And since these were black and white, they were also likely the inspiration behind Mr. Rhyme's monochrome shiny coloration. Its pre-evolution Mr. Mime, or at least the Kanto variant, is in a bit of a grey area, because while it's clearly based on the concept of a mime artist, a silent performer who mimics using body motion, the reason most people even know what that is because of the man Marcel Marceau. He is easily the most famous mime artist of all time, and popularized it during the 50s worldwide with his character Bip the Clown. So yeah, he may not have been the direct inspiration behind Mr. Mime, but without Marceau, Mr. Mime may not have existed, or looked and behaved significantly different. And there are some more Pokémon in that ambiguous camp, like Incineroar, which is based on the concept of a heel wrestler. While that is again not a specific person, there is a famous Japanese wrestler known as the Tiger Mask, which may have served as the inspiration behind Incineroar, a fellow wrestling tiger. Just so we're clear though, Tiger Mask is a role, which multiple people have portrayed, it's not an actual person. Kinda like Santa Claus, who served as obvious inspiration for Delibird. He's again not a real person, but he is based on a real-life Saint Nicholas who lived in what we now call Turkey in the time of the Roman Empire. And finally, one too humorous to pass up on, Gumshoes. No, this Pokémon is not based on Donald Trump. But the likeness is so close, Junichi Masuda and Shigeru Omori had to go on record to clarify he did not serve as an inspiration for the Pokémon. Probably for the better. Trump is crazy enough to pull an Uri Geller all over again. And that's all of them. I hope you learned something new in this video, and if you have some of your own information to add, feel free to share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Pokémon content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.